Hello, everyone. My name is Brian Morgan. We're going to be going into the sales engagement with this next segment. Now, with the sales engagement, we mean a visit to the customer. So, this is a single visit to the customer of what we're talking about. And we're going to walk through this process, do it pretty quickly, but we want you to really take a look at the text. And, there's a lot of thought processes on who do we go see first? What does that look like? It depends on situation, really. Um, but there's several things that we should know. There's a lot of good research out there, and based on my experience, we want to make sure we get to the person who is the most receptive um, to finding solutions to their challenges. So maybe it's the person that's having some issues. Maybe they're not completely defined yet, but it's up to us as a salesperson to really ask the correct questions and uncover those challenges and really develop those questions or develop those challenges into something that they really want to make a change for. And we're going to hit this at a high level. And in the text, I want you to pay attention to the fact that there's some key decision makers and there's some key influencers. So, those folks that I just described that may have these challenges, they may not be the final decision maker. But as an influencer, if you build the proper value for your solution and you solve their problems, is probably going to work out okay for you. And then you're going to get that opportunity to sit down in front of the decision makers and present your proposal for change. So let's talk about what is that first look or the first uh, intro to the customer look like. Who should it? Who should we target? Um, who are all the key players at the firm? These are all good questions, and it really depends on the size of the organization that you're going to see. But common to all businesses is this hierarchy. And if they're a for-profit business, then usually you've got these situations here that are described with the C level, the C suite. And then if you get into an owner run business, then maybe there are people playing multiple positions. So let's talk about a planner that we should use before we go to the visit. Too often, I have seen folks getting ready to go to a sales visit and they have really nothing planned. So they think that they're good enough to go and um, make the visit and be okay with just memory. But there are a lot of things going on within a customer location, within a client visit. There are emotions. Um, Sometimes people get stage fright when you're put into certain situations, and sometimes that stage fright will make you forget. And so you may walk out of there and not achieve the objective that you had set for yourself at all. And it's it's really better to have a plan and practice your plan so that when you walk in, it's going to be a really smooth process. I'm going to explain some of these for you. Let's get down into what the visit planner may look like. Well, maybe you have the company information here, and it's possible that your CRM system does this for you, allows you to put in your information, and then you can print it out, or you can save it and have it for your sales visit. But you want to know what the objective for the meeting is, and that means that you're bringing value to this meeting. You have to ask yourself, would you pay for you coming? And if you can't say yes, then that's a pretty tough situation. You need to have an opening theme, and sometimes that opening theme may sound a little commercial like, but just not too much. Thank you for the meeting. Some of the things that we're seeing in the marketplace has put our product or service in a distinct advantage. and we're seeing many customers come to us where our competitors have not been really able to fulfill, this certain challenge. And I'd like to go through this agenda, and if we see that both sides feel that there is certainly an opportunity here, I'd like to have your confidence that we could pursue this relationship a little bit further. Is that good with you? Maybe it's something like that, and it just helps get the conversation going. You need to have your questions planned for what you think the agenda is going to be, and hopefully you've set that agenda with the client. And then you have marketing insights. And marketing insights are very strategic. Marketing insights are not features. They're not features. They're not, what you think may be an advantage for the client if they use you. But it sounds something like this. A marketing insight would state 83% of PTO moms, parent teacher organization moms, that's moms that come to the school to help out with children, find that our after school training program for math beats the leading competitor hands down with better grades overall in the classroom. Yeah, it may sound something like that, but there's definitely a distinction made with your product or service, and there's some data, research data that goes with it. That would be a marketing insight. Then you have your negotiation strategy. What are you looking for? And we've talked about negotiations. What are you going to um, give for something that you want to get? So, what are you planning in this negotiation? And then, what are your target? What's your beginning, your target, and your walk away? What does that look like? And then, of course, any notes that you have. Um, so, what does it look like? Um, I'm going to start here with some pretty tough information for some of us in today's society. Um, not every not every firm appreciates individuality, and so let's define individuality. Individuality is me stating that I want to look the way I look, talk the way I talk, dress the way I dress, and expect the other person to accept it. That's not real. I can't share with you how important it is to make sure that you're representing your firm's brand appropriately. And more specifically, um, piercings, facial piercings, visible tattoos are not always appreciated by clients, especially corporate clients. If you want to see how most corporate leaders dress, then Google corporate leaders in your region. And most of the time, you're going to see men and women who are in business suits, who have themselves neatly kept without any visible piercings. Now, that doesn't mean that anyone is trying to take your individuality away from you. You can take your individuality and go somewhere where that culture may fit. But it doesn't mean that you can bring your individuality to the culture of which you signed up for. And that's something that sometimes um, new employees have a realism, a check, when they come to work and they find out, oh my gosh, I actually need to cut my hair, or either I have to keep myself clean shaven, which I don't right now. Um, but if I were part of an organization that did, then that would be what I would do. So don't think that it's a disrespect of you on your individuality. Just think of it that our individualities sometimes will disrespect the brand that we're trying to uphold. And I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Miracle. It's about the 1980 Olympics, where the coach, Herb Brooks, he says, your name on the front, which was USA, is a heck of a lot more important than the name on the back, which is our own. So when you're playing as part of a team, you need to make sure you look the part and you act the part and you uphold the brand that the organization has decided that you're going to uphold. And also your demeanor. You need to make sure that you're smiling, you're positive, you don't talk about someone else while you're there. You never talk bad about your competitor. These are all important things that are expected of sales professionals within the sales visit. So, what does it sound like when you go into the sales visit? Well, you should thank the client for the meeting and provide your full name and the firm that you represent in your position. So, my name is Brian Morgan. I represent the University of North Alabama. I'm a solution specialist for corporate training, and I specialize in sales. And my colleagues that I've brought here today, so you refer to your colleagues and then you introduce them. You present your business card appropriately, and then you wait to get a seat. So you wait until you're offered a seat. Don't come in and take liberty with uh, with the client. And if there are new members that come into the rooms that's going to join the meeting, then you would stand up if you're already seated. So you stand up and shake the hands of the clients that are entering the room. Make sure you introduce yourself. And if everyone gets seated, and then you confirm the time allowed for the meeting, you thank them, and then maybe you start some small talk, some rapport. And this rapport really depends on where you are and who you're dealing with. But it's best to stay with paying respect to the firm, or something great about the firm that you've learned from their website or online recently that you've read in an article or newspaper. And then your agenda, make sure you confirm the agenda with a client. Hey, I sent the agenda last week, just wanted to make sure that you're still good with it. Is there anything you'd like to change? And then you move through this decision process. So you ask for a confirmation on this. So it's important that you find out, is the person you're dealing with the decision maker, or will someone else be joining us later for the presentation or for our session. And then you proceed to take notes. But I'm gonna pause here. I'm gonna give you some real life examples of how this is so important, or why this is so important. And I think back to one time when I was with UPS, and the CEO for Hyundai North America, who had just come from Korea, come over, and he wanted to meet with us um, to learn more about UPS's capabilities globally. And I was to run point on that discussion with the CEO. So I rallied a team, an international specialist, supply chain solution specialist, and also local sales team. So we had everything prepared. We went through several meetings to get everyone up to speed, and we had a presentation. It was really good. We it come the day for the meeting. We decided to take 3 people in, and I took in the supply chain solution specialist and also the local representation. And 30 minutes before we were going to meet at the parking lot, just make sure everything's good, review a few things. But our local representative didn't show up. And 5 minutes before time for the meeting, we went in, and he's still not here. So as we get into the business, we had someone come and greet us, and we presented our business cards. And let me get a business card here. So for different cultures, you may present your business card in certain ways. So for us, we stated our name and stepped forward and presented our business card with two hands. And then we received the business card, uh, read it to make sure that we spoke and looked the person in the eye, thanked them for the meeting, and confirmed that. My supply chain specialist actually spoke Korean, so he was carrying on this conversation, which was really nice in Korean with the CEO, and everything's great. So we go into a, a boardroom. It's really nice, beautiful, large table, paintings on the wall, and the CEO sits us. He sits at the head of the table and he offers us a seat to the right. I asked permission to place a laptop computer on the table that would be used during our presentation. He granted me that right. And then I began to ask him several questions about things that he was looking for and how I could help him in this process for the agenda. So everything was going really, really great. We began our presentation. At about 20 minutes into the presentation, you have to think about who's still not here. And so that salesperson, the local salesperson, comes in late to the meeting, which is a very bad thing. So I'm going to try to tell you how this went. So you have to imagine that shirt is untucked, a napkin is out, and the person is coming in, slams the door, sneezes in a napkin, comes over, stuffs it in his pocket, and sticks out his hand to shake hands with the CEO, which is a really bad deal. And then he goes and sits on the opposite side of the table of what was granted to us, places his whole big bag up on the table, and then eventually begins to rock in his chair and goes to sleep, nods off, wakes up because of the dialogue. But it was a terrible, terrible situation. So in that one visit, I saw the best sales opening that I've ever seen, and I've seen the worst opening I've ever seen all in one visit. And so I tell you that story to share a little bit about the importance of preparing for the introduction, the opening of a sales call. Very, very critical. Now, once we get into the strategy, our purpose for being there begins with just understanding the lay of the land. So we've researched the client and we understand the situation. And here are some things that we might commonly let the person know that we know a little bit about but would like to learn some more. So we expand upon maybe the company sales. What are your top line sales? What's your growth projections for this next year? And what's your position in the marketplace? What does that look like? How many locations do you have? So really what we're looking for here is situation type questions that tell us just about the business itself. We're just understanding right now the business situation. And as you read through the text, you'll get into, we'll move to a mode of, after understanding, we start investigating a little bit. We're looking for some challenges. So with 6% growth or projected growth in business, do you see any challenges with making that growth? And you may hear, well, we feel like we're pretty good. There have been some supply chain issues, and that could be the only thing that we feel may hinder us because we would end up having maybe some stockouts. Okay. So as you're looking at those challenges, so you have some challenges with supply chain and stockouts. Now you need to indict that challenge. You really need to say, well, that sounds pretty tough. What happens when you have the stockouts? What happens when the supply chain shuts down on you? Then you dig a little deeper. You're peeling back more questions, more answers, and you're really getting to the cost of the matter. So all of these challenges that are there, or this challenge in particular, you want to dig down into the cost implications. Understand how much does it cost for this implication. And some of that would be, so if you have, stock outs, or if you have downtime, well, how many number of employees are affected? What are the hours worked? So how many hours is that? How much do they get paid per hour? And or what does it cost to get that back on track? Is there any additional cost that you have to incur? Are you paying any overtime? What about the lost business that you're not able to sell because you didn't have the goods that went somewhere else? So all of these implications are cost oriented. You have to assign a dollar amount to these. And the reason is, and we've got some examples here in the text. The reason is when you get to the point of offering value, if you don't have the cost of the problems, then you can't articulate the value well enough to show that your product or service is good. You'll just be working on price alone. And that's where the science and the art of selling comes in to help your client or to help your firm with its profitability. Now, when you propose a solution or alternatives or something that you can fulfill, it may sound something like this. So, also, I understand that you're having all of this excess cost. It looks like it's costing you, I don't know, $50,000 for the stockouts, and um, and then also you have $30,000 in lost sales. If I were to be able to provide a solution for you that could satisfy this situation and keep you working and actually give you higher quality service, would you be open to that? And so you're in this situation of proposing solutions, and you're discussing what that might be in value terms. And then you may propose some trades. So now we're in this negotiation mode where you're talking about total value. You're helping them cut all of this cost, and that has tremendous amount of value because it's real dollars to them, and your solution can demand a higher price if you're able to offset those costs. So then it comes down to, um, once you've built this, value, then you're articulating your case. So maybe you go through this process where you're presenting to the key decision maker because all of the influencers are now on board with you. And your presentation will show the current state of what's happening, and then also the future state with your solution, and then all of the costs listed on that current state and all of the cost savings on your future state. And then your presentation will articulate that value to the key decision maker so that the client will choose your firm. So let's look at it of what a flow might might be for making these sales visits. So we're in this one sales visit, and uh, this is an elementary look at first because, as you'll see later, we're going to talk about the entire sales process. This one visit may get us to a certain point, and then we get in advance to come back later so that we can work through another person and achieve our goals for this sales process. And we're building value throughout these entire phases of the process. So maybe meeting one, we meet with the operations manager because that person is really receptive to us because of the challenges that they have. Then we find out that, boy, we really need to go to customer service because our customer service manager, their customer service manager is having to field all of the calls from their customers, the users. Then maybe we go back to the operations manager because we learned some things in our second meeting. And then we're building this value proposal overall, and then we're getting into, okay, now we're going to be talking to the procurement manager, finance folks, until we really maybe have this fifth meeting where we're doing a proposal overall, where we're trying to win this client. And when we get to that point of trying to win the client, you've got to propose a close. And it's where many salespeople fail. They struggle closing the deal. But once you articulate the value and you have an agreement from the client that they're good with your numbers, then you must propose a close. And that comes relatively easy by asking for it. And with that process, you're just simply going to ask the client for the business and then to look and evaluate the implementation plan, which will be covered later. But that implementation plan will give you the ability to show the client that you can fulfill what you say you can fulfill. Now, if you're a college student and you're interested in going to sales competitions, usually the universities will track this process that we just described pretty well. You're going to live a single sales visit and you'll get graded on the process. And then usually after that single sales visit, they may give a follow-up if you did well enough to make the next turn. So the meeting opening, you can see that usually it's judged for 5% because there is an expectation that everyone can get through that introduction. But I'm telling you, sometimes that's a very difficult thing for some folks to do. You need to practice that because if you can get through the introduction well, usually the rest of the meeting will go pretty smoothly. Then you see here that identifying the needs is 40%. Most universities will have this needs identification and the presentation part of the competition pretty equal, but it's heavily weighted compared to the rest. Then there's always going to be an objection, which we'll talk about that a little bit later. You have to have all of the value at your disposal and be able to articulate those numbers so that you can overcome that objection when you get it. Then you gain the commitment, and there's also this expectation that you are professional and you can communicate clearly and that you appear trustworthy and credible. So that's the sales visit in review. Please get the text and take a look at the text. And when you go through it several times and practice, you can also Google sales competitions and see this in action. I think you'll get a lot out of it. So that's the sales visit itself, and then we'll move forward in the videos.